So you're saying there's a chance. Can South Carolina go back to Willie B and figure out a way to knock off a top 5 team in Alabama? We talk about that next with a full preview featuring Clint Lamb from Cover Crimson. Locked on Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. We got a good episode for you today. We're in a new setting. I got kicked out of the office because the missus has several important meetings today, and we are both working from home. So got a good episode for you today, though. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, pretty cool stuff. This is the best way to grow the channel. Obviously, commenting, subbing, and all that kind of stuff, and engaging in the comments. We've had an incredible week, and you guys have been awesome. I appreciate it. I know times have been tough over the past week or so, but we've gained roughly 200 followers in the past 3 days. That's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys for that. Before we get started, I want to talk about our friends at Game Time. They are sponsoring the show today. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, for $20 off your first purchase. All right, our guest is backstage. Very special guest. Not a lot like me. White guy with a beard. Wears his hat forward, though, so we're nothing alike. One of my oldest friends in this industry. Very excited to be reunited with him. We used to do a podcast together, and now we're on opposing sides. We're going to talk about the game this week. Welcome in, Clint Lamb.
I have my age a little bit more, Chris. I think that's the difference. My hat being forward signals that I have entered that next stage in life, and you're still working on it.
Are we just starting the show off with an insult? That's a lot.
Well, I mean, I'm definitely not going to be insulting South Carolina or any of your fans, so you're the only target, brother. You're the only person I have any sort of hostility towards, because you thought I was going to be hosting this. You thought I was going to be.
We are behind because of me. It's my fault.
You texted me, and I was like, brother, I'm waiting on you, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's surprised that the organization part of this was delayed because of me. But no, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. Clint does a great job at Cover Crimson, covering all things Alabama. Also, just a good job in general of covering most things X's and O's and getting into the nitty gritty of stuff. I tell you what I am most offended by. You said you're not going to say anything negative about South Carolina. I do appreciate that, but there's a lot of opportunities to do that, especially at Mike Shula.
Well, it's not. If I said that, that's not what I meant. I'm more so meant, I'm not going to try to say anything that's going to offend fans or listeners.
Yeah,
I'm going to be honest, and the things that I say that are honest, I feel like a lot of the fans or listeners are going to agree with. So, definitely we're not protecting staff and team necessarily. We are protecting the listeners, because I will say, as much as Alabama fans like to complain sometimes, you lose that game to Florida State. It's ugly. The whole world's coming to an end. South Carolina fans, they understand it. There's a lot of expectations coming into the season. We were expected to have one of the top quarterbacks in the country, who is still easily one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country. And while there were some, question marks, it was like, this is going to be a competitive football team. And granted, I've told people all week on our show that, understand it's 3-4, but it's losing to 4 really good football teams.
Right.
If you were in the ACC or another conference, you're probably 1-2 losses, and everybody's thinking, hey, you're a really good football team. And I still think South Carolina is a good football team despite some of those struggles. And yes, we can go ahead and start that right out the gate. Mike Shula is a massive problem.
Yeah, I don't think it's a secret. Also, I don't love how tan you are in this video in comparison. I feel like I'm see-through right now. I don't know if it's Halloween or what.
Larry's not white. Larry's clear. We'll Space Jam it. But no, I think it's the lighting. I worked very hard on this lighting, brother, because I'm redheaded. No one's getting confused and saying, "Oh, that's a day walker right there." No, I'm either pink or white. I always tell people. So if I'm going to get on camera, going to try to get my lighting correct where I can at least look a little normal, like a a normal human being, I guess.
Thanks, dude. That does feel like a shot, and it should be. I'll let you have that one because I think that's I mean, you and I did the show last year together, and it was like when I was in Atlanta and talking from like the living room. We were in that one bedroom in downtown, so it's like, dude, we got a full studio. I was very excited to show it to you, but listen, the Auburn fiance is already going through it, and she had a meeting this morning. We'll talk about that some other time. Okay, So going through, like you just said, I think that when you talk about from the outside looking in, I think South Carolina fans are very aware of what most of the issues are. They're probably tired of hearing me talk about the issues, or everyone, because it feels like it's very glaring. From the outside looking in, what do you see from the South Carolina team? Good, bad, anything in between?
Offensive line's been pretty bad. And granted, I know injuries have played a part to an extent. Obviously losing Case and Henry as early as they did. Like, I thought he was playing pretty good football. I think the left guard, Surratt, the true freshman, I think he's actually going to end up being a pretty good player. I was surprised. He might be one of the better offensive linemen that they have available right now, but that's where a lot of this stems from. It's very hard as far as running the football, keeping your quarterback protected, even if you've got a mobile guy like LaNorris Sellers. I mean, you got to be able to call plays that, I think they're too limited offensively, one, through their play calling, and two, their offensive line. If those two issues, or even if one of those issues didn't exist, I think that would very much help. But I think the combination of those two has caused a lot of problems for you guys.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, I think I kept saying going into the season, I was like, listen, the offensive line, there's no way it can get worse. And boy, was I wrong.
So this is your fault, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I did. I forgot who. I think it was Doring. Chris Doring brought it up yesterday. We were on with him, and he was like, what I just realized, dude? You have covered all these different teams in the SEC. You're covering South Carolina, and they're having a terrible season. You're living in Baton Rouge. They're having a terrible season. He's like, you did a Bama show in addition to the South Carolina show last year. They went 9-4. He's like, maybe you're the problem. And I was like, you sound like every ex I've ever had, Doring. So I appreciate that.
Hey, and ever since you got with an Auburn fan, they've been terrible.
That was on purpose. They deserve it. I'm going to do Tennessee next. I'm kidding. I'm happy. I think like that's obviously like one of the biggest negative sides. Is there something that you think that is, I don't want to say redeemable because it makes it seem like the bar is set so low, but the bar is kind of set low. Positive standpoint, what are you seeing that is like when you put on the tape that is at least standing out in a good way?
I think defensively they're pretty good. I think being on the field a lot is hurting them. I don't think they're getting any complimentary help from the offense, or at least not enough to make any sort of substantial difference. But I think, defensive line, I think the interior isn't as good as it was last year. You had a bunch of good players, good rotation. And I think from a pass rush standpoint, complementing what you had on the outside, creating strain for opposing offenses, I think that was very beneficial for their defense in general. But I still think they're good on the interior. They're a serviceable defensive front on the interior, but their edge guys, obviously, Dylan Stewart, I'm sure you probably have more of an update on. I'm pretty sure he's expected to play, but
he's not even on the injury report. Just it was unless I missed that. They're the healthiest they've been all year, Clint. They are big. Mason Henry's the only one that's out. Without interrupting, but I guess I will, which is just going back to our days. No, but they had, I look at the injury report last night, and it's like you see the one from Bama, and it's nobody new that's missing or anything like that, which is a relief from them, I think, with what they've seen the past couple weeks. But with South Carolina, it was like, not only did you have 3 offensive linemen out, the offensive line's already terrible. You had 3 offensive linemen out, and then you have some of these backups getting hurt. So Case and Henry's the only one that's out. I think it was a hip flexor situation from Dylan Stewart, but anytime that guy's playing 6 snaps, not great.
Yeah, and that's going to matter. And, is it Brian Thomas? I don't know. Okay, just making sure, because I was like, man, I always think of the LSU receiver. And but I mean, I think he's a good complementary piece. I don't think he's what they had last year, but they still got some dudes that can get out to the quarterback. And that's why I think Alabama in this game, they need to try to do their best job to avoid those, pretty obvious passing situations. Because I actually was just talking about this on my show. And when you talk about Tennessee, what they converted from a third down perspective versus what they didn't, they converted a 3rd and 13, I think, on the opening drive, back down near their own end zone. But then from that point, all of their third downs, it was a 3rd and 2, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. You did have a 3rd and 10, but it was on a pass interference later in the game. When you look at what they didn't convert on 3rd downs, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13, you had the fumble from Ty Simpson on 3rd and 10. They did hold them one time on a 3rd and 2, but then they didn't convert a 3rd and 7. So, I mean, that's to be expected to an extent as far as, okay, 3rd and mediums, 3rd and longers, it's a lower percentage as far as conversion. But I think that was a perfect representation of Alabama needs to try to avoid some of those obvious passing situations, because with what they've had from a hostile environment, from a pass rush perspective, and how they can get after you, the limitations as far as some of the athleticism and handling edge speed, they'll probably have to commit quite a bit to chipping and doing different things to try to slow down those edge guys. That's something, I mean, just across the board, whether it be first level, I think second level, I love Justin Okoronkwo. He was one of my favorite young players for Alabama. Dude. And if you go back, you can pull the receipts. That was one of maybe 2. Devontae Smith, I was like, I really, I didn't want to see Alabama lose him. But Justin Okoronkwo, had it not been for just a crazy JUCO circumstance, getting Justin Jefferson back, and then also the crazy injury, not crazy, but just devastating knee injury to Deontay Lawson that kind of caused him to return. And then you add in Nakai Hill Green, more than likely Justin Okoronkwo would have been in a position to start for Alabama. Length, size, speed. I mean, the guy can, he is built in a lab in a lot of ways. And so I really like how he's coming on strong for South Carolina. And I think they got some good pieces in the back half. So overall, I mean, as much as the offense has struggled, I think the defense is a very, very good, not, I wouldn't say elite, but it is a very serviceable SEC defense. When you look and you say that's what you expect from pretty much all of the really good teams in the SEC, is that type of defense.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback on that, we're going to go to a quick little break here, but also the comment you made about Devontae Smith, just so South Carolina fans know, he's talking about Devontae Smith, the defensive back that ended up going to Notre Dame. But our audience here has heard me talk about Justin Okoronkwo and say the name correctly. Thank you very much.
You didn't have to just know it. I hear a lot of people have to just know it.
But he's been awesome, and I think that people have been hearing me talk about him for a while. I remember even before you and I had the show, we had that conversation. I remember having a conversation with somebody on staff at Bama, and they were like, dude, if that guy was born in America, he's a 5-star. Like flat out. Like, you don't have a situation where like if he's not born in Germany. He's been awesome. I think also, man, if you watch some of the tape, and we'll talk about this afterwards, but it's not an elite defense like it was last year. It will be next year, in my opinion. I think it will be. They need to add a couple of interior defensive line or interior D-line pieces. But Fred Johnson is just scratching the surface of how good he is. He reminds me a lot of Rolando McClain. And he's, 6'4", 250. He's a beast. So, but there's a lot more to get to. I'm going to take Clint out of here. We're going to pay some bills and Locked On Gamecocks. Well, you're coming back, though, so don't leave. Locked On Gamecocks continues right after this. All right. Before we go to break, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Quo/OpenPhone, formerly OpenPhone. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer. So no more carrying 2 phones like Kevin Gates or relying on a landline. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. You can even keep your existing number for free. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Also want to give a shout out to our friends at FanDuel. We've got a big weekend ahead of us, a lot of good games, which means there's a lot of good things to be putting some money on as well. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. Doesn't matter even what the odds are. Just put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when we're in the middle of, I think it's 49 straight days of football. I don't know what day we're on right now, but there was Kennesaw State playing last night, Louisiana Tech, Western Kentucky were in a barn burner the other night. We've also got World Series baseball coming up, and the NBA is back. Just don't be like Chauncey Billups and start doing some things on the low that are shady. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. We'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks right after this. We're back. We're back with Clint Lamb. Going into this game, we'll break down. We'll use this segment to kind of break down some of the X and O's and what Alabama you think plans to do or how you would attack it if you were in charge there. Talk obviously some more about South Carolina, and I'll give you from my standpoint. Maybe we'll start there, and I'll tell you the frustrations, and you can tell me if I'm crazy or stupid. And then the last thing, we'll obviously do our predictions and everything. So from a South Carolina standpoint, I think the only thing that's more maddening than the inefficiency is the ineptitude and inability to get things continuing to go. And I think that's, like you said at the start of the show, unprompted, by the way. We're not here to like protect staff or anything, but like just deliver stuff to the audience. And I think it's not anything that is attacking someone personally. It's just where we're at 7 games into the season and how frustrated people should be. And people are. I don't know if you know this, Clint. There was a protest on campus the other day, very mild protest about firing Mike Shula. That's where the audience and fans are for South Carolina right now in beautiful Columbia, South Carolina. Now, here's the one thing I will say. I think you have some opportunities to potentially try and run the football against Alabama, where they are like their biggest vulnerability, especially over the past couple of weeks, is chunk plays in the run game and being able to effectively stop the run consistently. They've done it. First drive of the game for Tennessee, it's 3rd and 2. They get a stop and a 1-yard gain, get the ball back, and see how that goes. I mean, to do that Tennessee when Tennessee's on script was shocking to me because no one's better on script in the country than Josh Heupel. South Carolina is pretty good on script as well in their first series in each game. But the issues are this, man. I said this last week. You had 50 yards rushing on the first drive. Do you want to guess how many yards they ended up with in rushing?
How many?
They had 50 on the first drive, Clint. They finished with 54.
Okay, that's worse than I was going to guess.
Yeah,
that is so much worse. I would have said, they finished with probably 75 or 80.
That would have been bad too. But I mean, still. And you think about the other stuff that's happened throughout the season. You had the game against Missouri where LaNorris has 300 yards passing. You have under 300 yards total offense, Matthew. But like again, it's not that. It's the ineptitude of some of the decisions they're making. So Matthew Fuller against LSU gets a 72-yard touchdown, doesn't touch the ball the rest of the first half. 72-yard touchdown run, maybe feed the hot hand. I don't know. I do think that they are going to be able to have some success trying to run. Maybe you just take a page out of Vandy's playbook and you start doing some stuff where you're getting people in motion, making more things for the eye to see, more window dressing for the linebackers who have done.
Are you asking Mike Shula to be creative right now?
Yeah. Isn't that a bad idea?
Yeah, as much as I think that would be great, I wouldn't bank on it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this would be the type of game where if you pull that out of nowhere, I don't think Alabama would be expecting it. So definitely think it would catch them off guard. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I think the creativity there has been a massive problem. Just a feel for who are our playmakers. Right. Not only on a season-long basis, but on an individual game basis, who has the hot hand, and how do we get that player the football? Like a lot of offensive coordinators, they are very good at that. Others, they struggle with it. Some people struggle with understanding how to utilize certain skill sets. But that's something that is probably from a South Carolina fan's perspective, I think is probably the most frustrating thing about the entire offense. As bad as the offensive line has been, it has been the inability to get your playmakers the football consistently enough when it matters. So I understand that frustration for sure.
I think there's so many players that I thought going into the season that you're like, man, this guy could have a breakout year. This guy could do this. And then, I said this last week too. I allowed myself to have the delusion for one more week they would turn it around because they did last year. And they did last year. That Bama game really turned them into a little bit of a menace. And they came very close to winning that game. I don't know if you have a blueprint. Let me rephrase. If you go into this game in South Carolina and your mindset is we're going to have a blueprint of what we did last year, let's see if we can recreate that and then go win the football game. That's not going to happen. I think that these are not only two different teams, but also I just think that that's a recipe for not disaster, but it's not a winning recipe. So I think you got to figure out a new way to go about it. I think honestly, like being able to run LaNorris and in a way that's effective, north and south, not getting him, going east and west like he had to do against LSU, running for his life a little bit. Here's the other thing too, Clint. It's a really good defense for Alabama. That's swarm D with Kane Womack and all that kind of stuff. But if there's one thing they don't do, I wouldn't say well, because they did a great job of it last week with Yanzi Pierre. The thing that they don't necessarily fill up a stat sheet with is sacks and getting to the quarterback. So maybe there's a little bit more time. Maybe that they can figure something out that way. What's like a matchup problem you could foresee, if there even is one, in this game for either side, or maybe one for each?
Well, I think that you raise a great point, and I think the run defense has been suspect at times, especially when you can get runs out on the perimeter and get a playmaker in isolation with Damani Jackson, who they've been kind of trending away from him a little bit. Don't know if that's permanent, but they've been going with a true freshman, Dijon Lee, a little bit more physical, a little bit more willingness to come up and make plays, whether it be against working off a block and making a tackle against the screen game, or it's coming up and making a hit on perimeter run or whatever. But he's also he's going through some freshman growing pains. Physical freak, 6'4" plus, 200 plus pounds as a corner, and just he's a unicorn out there, and it can be a really big mismatch problem in that cover 3 scheme where it's tough to get balls over him. But he's also gettable, especially on a lot of the in breaking routes and things like that. He's still growing and learning. So whether you're talking about Damani Jackson and his vulnerabilities on the perimeter as a kind of a liability at times against the run, or it working downhill for any reason, or it's true freshman who is going to battle, but maybe you can get him through some scheme things, which is why I think Mike Shula could be pretty important in this game if he ends up doing that. But that they've had a problem with stopping the run at times. You're 100% correct. And then the pass rush, I think they're starting to figure some things out on that front. But it has been a situation where, despite the fact that they had 4 sacks against against Tennessee last week, a lot of that came early. And one thing that Kane Womack has talked about this week is that they are still having a massive problem in those obvious passing situations, whether it be a 2-minute drill and they're having to work down the field quickly. Maybe it's a 1-score game and they're trying to, they're going to have to throw the football because there's not a lot of clock left, but it's a 1-score game. They've put out their dime package, had 3 bandits on the field at the same time, which, for those who don't know, the bandit is like the strong side field defensive end. He's a little bit more of a bigger body, not as twitched up, not as explosive, but they move one of their bandits, LT Overton, inside as an interior player, and then they put in Keon Keeley and Cavante Henry, where at least Cavante Henry was the guy against Tennessee. It was kind of his first action of the year, but they've been doing that quite a bit. And it just, in late game situations, whether it be up multiple scores and you're doing it for a majority of the fourth quarter against Tennessee, or you're in a 1-score game and they're trying to come back and win, just the pass rush hasn't been able to even come close to getting home in any of those situations. So the guys either need to be more productive, or as Kane Womack put it, he's got to switch some things up schematically to try to help them get home a little bit more. You got to be disciplined in how you rush LaNorris Sellers because of his legs. So you can't just pin your ears back and you can't give him any sort of lanes to step up in and take off, because he can absolutely destroy you if you allow him to do that. And the second you allow him to do that a couple of times, that can really start getting that offense going. So they'll need to be very disciplined in their rush lanes. But I think that while Alabama's defense has been good, when you look at the numbers, I also think the numbers, in some ways, they're being aided by a very ball-controlled offense. And so the opposing offense's possessions, the number of them have been limited, and that has kind of kept points down for both teams. The offense isn't scoring a ton, as much as you would think, considering the offensive success. And the defense, despite the fact that I think there's been a little bit more vulnerability there, they haven't given up as many points per game as you would think, given some of those struggles. So I think that the offensive line is by far my biggest concern for South Carolina, as I've said, because I think, especially on the interior, I think right now, James Smith is starting to play really good football. Tim Keenan's an absolute ox. I think Edric Hill's playing pretty good football. And Simmons is a guy who is trending and emerging in a major way. So South Carolina's going to need to be careful, because I think that Alabama interior defensive line can cause them issues. Maybe some of these guys getting healthy and getting back and stuff can help with that a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things too, we'll say this and we'll go to a quick break and come back to our final segment here. Appreciate Clint Lamb obviously being on here. Great wealth of knowledge, dude. Missed being able to do this. But no, I think one of the things you brought up too was especially on the interior offensive line, and they were bad offensively on the offensive line last year. You're talking about but part of that might have been just Josiah Thompson, true freshman, former 5-star, tons of upside. We have not seen it at all yet. You're in danger of being a little bit of a bust if you can't figure out a way to turn around. And maybe that does change with Sean Elliott kind of coaching him up a little bit more with more hands-on opportunities to do that now that he's in charge there. The other thing too, man, is the roster for South Carolina has, and now this is gonna, as a Bama guy, this will shock you, okay? But they've only signed or committed 10 total 5-stars in the history of the program, okay? So they have 9 total. One of those 10 is Darius Gray for next year. Tremendous interior offensive lineman, 5-star guy. Should probably plug and play right away. And that would be great. But the other 9 that you've had historically in your program, 3 of the 9 are on campus right now on this roster. And that is that's a concern because you're like, man, this roster should have been more talented. And so you're frustrated there. The other part too is you look at some of the numbers of PFF. This offense has given up 26 sacks. I don't want to say offensive line because from a PFF standpoint, the offensive line has only been responsible for 13 of them. And that means that 13, so half, have also fallen on LaNorris Sellers doing dumb crap like last week where it's 1st and 10, you're rolling out to your left, and instead of just throwing the ball away, you run out for a 5-yard loss, a lot like Jalen Milroe did in his first year as a starter in 2023. So it's things like that, but 6 of the 13 have come right up the middle on the center. Whoever the center has been,
Boaz Stanley has struggled.
Badly. And there's been other players that have played the position this year. And they've rotated the guards as well. And trying to figure out whether it's the best 5 or right 5, but it's right up the middle, man. I mean, so it's like LaNorris. Sometimes I wonder why you would even get under center, because if you start backpedaling, you just keep going, brother. All right.
Well, I mean, Josiah Thompson, is he a young player?
He's a sophomore, true sophomore.
I will say I was looking at some of his numbers and I was watching some of the tape. I mean, I don't know if South Carolina fans realize this, but of his 13 pressures that he's allowed this season, 10 of them have come on the road. That's a huge chunk. So in this particular game, he's actually played quite a bit better at home. I don't know if that's a communication issue. I don't know if that's just overly anxious, the moment, the atmosphere, but he's definitely struggled some on the road. That shouldn't be a problem in this particular matchup. And like I said, Surratt, I think, is still growing as a player, but I think they got something there. And then Nolan Hay,
man.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting? They're so big. I mean, I was looking at the sizes and stuff. They are massive.
It's an NFL size offensive line. They haven't had that before. Casey Henry's the smallest one.
Yeah. And he was. I mean, that's this. I'm not saying it would be fixed and it would be fun, but it's just that's the one guy based off of being kind of a veteran and the way he was playing and stuff. You really couldn't afford to lose. So that was unfortunate. But Nolan Hay, I think he's going to be back. Yeah, you said everybody.
I think he's questionable at this point on the, but that would be trending in the right direction as opposed to last week.
He's played some center, and I think he's played better than Boaz Stanley. Stanley on tape, he struggled, man. He struggled bad. So I think that's where, Alabama's got some good interior players. So he's going to have to bring his A game because you don't want that pocket getting collapsed on top of LaNorris Sellers. And then, because then if they can intentionally flush him, they can anticipate that Justin Jefferson or one of Alabama's linebackers, spying him, and then they anticipate and can get after him a little bit. That's not what you want for South Carolina.
No, it's not. Thanks for bringing it up. I thought we were in a good mood. All right, we're going to take Clint out for a second, and we'll be right back with more. We're going to pay some bills, and we'll be right back. All right, last but not least, we're going to close out this show with some predictions. I don't know if I'm going to give my prediction yet. I probably should. But we are definitely going to get one from Clint as well. He's done a great job. Appreciate him coming on the show. Before we do that, I want to give a shout-out to another friend of the program with Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every single model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move or be moved. All right. We are back for the last part of the show here with our buddy Clint Lamb. And Clint, you said some interesting stuff there before we went to break about just the center position in general, what Alabama would plan to do there. I don't think this is a game where, like, Yanzi Pierre has been awesome. Like, he's been great over the past couple weeks. It's funny because I was just like a little peel behind the onion here. I was sitting here in Baton Rouge, and it was the day of the South Carolina LSU game, and I was sitting there talking with some LSU people, and the Bama Vandy game I think was on in the background. I think that was that day, or was it Bama Mizzou? It was Bama Mizzou, maybe.
Wait, what day was this?
It was whenever Bama was playing Vanderbilt, and I was here in Baton Rouge, and I was sitting there watching with a couple of my coworkers who are all LSU guys, and they were like, "That number 42 for Bama sucks," and I was like, okay, I don't know if that's true. And then last week, obviously, he goes off and has 3 sacks and a safety and all that kind of stuff. I'm not as concerned with him. I am concerned about Tim Keenan. Tim Keenan right up front, lining up over the middle, lining up over the center. That'll be a problem as well. I think one of the things I talk about from a matchup standpoint, and I'll say that I do think it's a better matchup than people are talking about for South Carolina in some areas, because like last week against Oklahoma, you're not talking about Oklahoma's offense is I think massively overrated. And we have talked ourselves into the fact that John Mateer is this like incredible talent because they beat Michigan at home, who's very average with a freshman quarterback, and they beat a very bad Auburn team at home as well to start the season. So unless you ask Auburn fans or Hugh Freeze, in which they could be 6-1, then you should give them like a lifetime contract. But the other thing too is this. They go into last week, and you're facing a defensive front that is one of, if not the best in the country. It's a top 5 defense. This is a good defense, but they are just schematically very different than that Oklahoma team. They're schematically different than what LSU is as well. And LSU, talking to Brian Kelly, their entire attitude going into that game against South Carolina was they were going to get after LaNorris Sellers the entire game. A lot of safety blitzes, a lot of exotic blitzes from Blake Baker. I don't know if you see it this weekend, but I will say that Bama being ineffective in the run game, I think it's an opportunity for them to try and get better at it. But I also think you match up better defensively with them than you have in some areas, because they have not been able to run the ball effectively for most of the season. And South Carolina's defense, like you said, has been pretty good. Is there a matchup that you're either most intrigued by, whether it's South Carolina's defensive backs going up against the receivers or anything we talked about earlier, where you think it'll be actually a good battle and not something that might be one-sided like the offensive line, defensive line situation?
I think as for good battle,
Stewart versus Proctor could be a thing, by the way. That would be fun.
Say that again.
Dylan Stewart versus Caden Proctor could be.
That's where, you were saying a good battle. To me, I actually think in some ways, because Brian Thomas, he is 6'2", 249. He's not like an overly big guy either. So, but they got some juice from both their edges. And so I think in a lot of ways, Alabama's going to have to do some things to help out their tackles, because if you leave them on islands against those 2 edge guys, I actually think that kind of leads South Carolina in some ways, despite the fact that I think Caden Proctor is a really good player. Yeah. He's still growing, and that the edge speed still causes him some issues at times.
Physically growing?
Say what?
Is he physically growing?
Mentally growing, I guess, is the correct way to. Yeah, I got. Yeah, that's probably.
Get, dude.
Dude, no, he's 355, brother. He's compared to at least me. I'm not going to speak for you, but he's going in the right direction. I've been going in the wrong direction, so I ain't going to say nothing to nobody. He was 369, and then I think he was 360 on the spring roster, and then they updated the fall roster, and he was 366. And Bama fans were like, "Come on, dude! Like, man, you need to be like 340, 345, and you're up over here gaining 6 pounds." Well, he was dealing with off-season shoulder problems, had to have surgery, and so he's actually down, I think, to 355 right now. So he's worked hard on it. Doing that in season could be kind of difficult. But you're right. It's very unfair for me to say physically, whatever I said, physically improved.
I got you. I threw you off on that.
But no, I do think that's a matchup that Alabama will need to be wary of. Missouri, Alabama had to start doing a lot to handle their edge. And what they started doing is just sending a ton at Alabama's offense as far as extra bodies to kind of say, okay, you want to try to help out your tackles. We're going to attack some of those inside gaps with multiple bodies and overwhelm the interior guys. And that was actually pretty effective against Ty Simpson. So that's something that I could totally see South Carolina looking to do if they have the kind of success that Missouri did out there on the edge. And then you've got Tennessee, who they had a really good pass rush coming in. They didn't sack Ty Simpson once. They did affect him a couple of times, but not as far as getting into the ground. If they have that limited success like that, then I think it could end up getting pretty ugly for South Carolina, because just this offense and the way that Ty Simpson's so dialed in, it's tough to defend. And so while I do think there could be some problem areas, I also think just Alabama's playing really good football. The thing that we don't know is, and I said this post-game Tennessee, and I actually got in trouble with Alabama fans because I said it. And especially, 24-hour rule. Let's celebrate a 17-point win over a big rival. I mean, I was like, the next one is the one that Kalen DeBoer has lost at Alabama. It hadn't been against the top 20. They have lost against one top 25 opponent since he's gotten there. It was against Tennessee last year on the road, and really the defense even had a pulse in that game. More than likely, they win that one as well. Defense played a great game, especially in the first half. But they've lost to Michigan. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Oklahoma. They lost to Florida State. All of these 500, sub-500 football teams. And once again, it's these teams that from a record standpoint doesn't deserve a whole lot of respect.
Right.
But if you actually look at the layers of it, especially in the SEC, who are those losses coming against? And that's where South Carolina is. With it being a hostile road environment, with it being a quarterback that at any point can turn into Superman, bottom line, the fact that you do have a pass rush that you need to kind of be concerned about, I think on paper, Alabama should win pretty handedly. What we don't know is, will they continue to have those kind of struggles? And you've got a South Carolina team, a Shane Beamer, backs against the wall. I mean, you're not going to the playoffs. That's the bottom line. Overall, disappointing compared to the expectations coming in. But what's one way to fix that? You can at least get things trending back in the right direction if you can get a big win against an Alabama team that 4 top 25 opponents all had their shots at the last 4 games, and none of them could get the job done. If you can, that's moving things in the right direction. So to say there's no glimmer of hope for South Carolina would be foolish. I will say, though, based off of the score prediction that I gave on our show, and we'll say here, that might be the one thing that I said that might upset South Carolina fans a little bit.
So let me piggyback on that a little bit, and I'll say I feel the exact same way, because I said this at a board in July, and now the number is kind of getting some run. Not saying that I'm the one that was the whistleblower on it, but people are starting to realize just how bad it was. I mean, you talk about, he is 19-3 against ranked opponents as an FBS head coach. 19-3 is the best record of anyone in the country. He was 15-3 going into the season. That was overwhelmingly the largest or the best number of any coach in the country. So 19-3 now. But when you talk about what he's doing against top 25 teams, incredible, 6-1 Bama. Every time you see a list of, here's the top 10 coaches, and it's Sarkisian, Kirby, Dan Lanning, he's undefeated against everyone ahead of him on that list. But where he struggled going into the season, he had 14 losses at the FBS level. 10 of those losses were on the road. They were against unranked opponents, and I believe 6 of the 14 at the time were against teams he was a double-digit favorite against. All of those things, all of those boxes are checks for this South Carolina team. You're on the road. It's an unranked team. And here's the other part too. I think that South Carolina, I love what you said about there's layers to it from where they can you look at some of the losses they've had. They lost a team that didn't deserve a lot of respect from people, but the one other commonality that all those games had, except for Tennessee, because they had every opportunity to win that game, three turnovers in the first half and only had 7 points. But you think about Vandy last year. They got behind by double digits, and it was an insurmountable lead, especially with how Vandy runs their offense. They got behind against Michigan by double digits. They got behind against Oklahoma by double digits. And then this year against Florida State, they got behind them by double digits. This is the one team that I don't honestly believe, if they get up by double digits, because it could happen. South Carolina could be on script. They can go down the field and have a good first opening drive and score. and maybe get a stop. I think they'll force some turnovers. They do it better than anyone else in the conference. And then maybe you see a punt block, or they kick to Vakari Swain, or something like that happens, and you see Beamer ball come into effect, or all the things that South Carolina has done, not just in like an anomaly, but routinely at times as a program. Maybe that happens and you somehow get up 14-0 and the crowd's into it and you're fired up. The one thing, and I hate to be negative about it, but I don't think that this offense has the ability to then suck the life out of you and squeeze you for the remaining however much time's left and continue to score or even run clock to make sure you're off the field. That's where I think the issues are for the South Carolina team. So, I mean, I'll give my prediction, I guess. I hate it. I think Alabama wins 30-10. I just don't see how the offense keeps up, man. I just don't see how the offense keeps up. And I would love nothing more to see. I've been saying it for weeks, Clint. I don't need Shane Beamer to win these games that he's not supposed to win necessarily. It'd be nice, but I'm not an idiot enough to expect it. I was last week, I'll be honest. I was like, we got to Thursday, and I was like, they're winning this game, brother. But I think the thing I do want to see more than anything, dude, just take a step forward. You know what I mean? Like, just take a step forward. I think I gave the analogy. It's funny enough that you brought up the weight thing. I gave the analogy. I was like, maybe you step on the scale and you lose 0.2 pounds. Like just give me a step in the right direction. So,
well, yeah. I mean, and my final score prediction on our show was 30-13. So I think, a couple of field goal drives, a touchdown drive, that all makes sense to me. And granted, like I said, I mean, there are plenty of scenarios where Alabama just feels overwhelmed by the moment. What I will say, one of the most encouraging things that I've seen all season from Alabama was when they got down 7-0 against Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt was in scoring position again. In the past, they were definitely giving up a field goal or a touchdown, and they were going down multiple scores, and now it was going to be a long day for Alabama. They have laid down in those situations.
Yeah.
And then they end up forcing a big turnover with Vanderbilt in striking distance, and then they go down the field and score, and they tied up 7-7. Completely different than any point we had seen, like you said, against Florida State or really any other opponent other than Tennessee last year. So that's encouraging. But I mean, I will say, when you talk about what it takes from a home field advantage, from a pass rushing perspective, what Alabama likes to do as far as throwing the football. Now, they get the football out of Ty's hands quickly. It's not as easy as you think just because they throw the football around. He knows what he wants to do pre-snap. If you end up disguising it and giving them something different, he can process that information really quickly, understand where he wants to go with the football based off of what's called, and he can get the football out of his hand, quickly still. So it's very difficult to defend this Alabama offense. But when they start having to hang on to the football for long periods of time, it doesn't work out. I mean, Ty Simpson takes a lot of unnecessary sacks. He puts them in bad situations. When that happens, he's taking them out of field goal range or absolutely killed drives. So to say that based off of what South Carolina brings to the table from a pass rushing perspective, that it can't match up, at least in some scenarios, really well against what Alabama does, I mean, I definitely would disagree. So Alabama has to bring their A game. And I just think right now they're dialed in and they're focused. Yeah. And so I'm expecting them to. But if they don't, South Carolina is exactly the type of team that can not only cause them problems, but beat them if Alabama is not, and I think one of the big problems in those types of games is I think that the coaching staff can get kind of vanilla and they just think we're not going to have to do a whole lot as far as matching personnel. We can go to standard 4-2-5 against what I mean, they were given such run heavy looks against Vanderbilt last year as far as multiple tight ends, multiple running backs, and they're going with that standard 4-2-5 look. Usually you see them matching with 3-4 personnel, getting bigger bodies on the field. And so I think they just thought they're going to go to Nashville and hand Vanderbilt a loss, and we're not going to have to do a whole lot from a creative standpoint to do it. And then you find yourself in these games and it's like, oh, no. If they continue to approach these games like that, and hopefully from their standpoint, they've lost enough doing that where it's like we got to take every opponent. This is the SEC. This ain't the Pac-10. These teams can beat you. This is not a Wisconsin from the Big Ten, where it really didn't matter if you weren't prepared for them. From a quarterback play standpoint, they were so limited. You didn't have to have a great game plan against Wisconsin to get a win. This type of team in the SEC, this is the type of team that just on paper Everybody said Georgia was going to murder Alabama's offensive line back in that 2021 SEC championship after what Alabama's offensive line did against Auburn the week before. But Georgia was very vanilla. I think that was intentional because they had the mulligan, but they thought our dudes are just going to be able to beat your dudes because we've got a historic front and you've got a terrible, especially the right side of their offensive line. And they barely got a hand on Bryce that entire game. So if Alabama takes, so I mean,
the week before to Auburn.
So I mean, it was if Alabama takes a similar approach, they're going to pay for it dearly as well, as far as thinking that they're going to be able to have their way with South Carolina's offensive line. And once again, with a lot of these guys coming back, I mean, they might not be 100%, but they'll be healthy enough to play. I still think that, you don't really fully know what you'll get from South Carolina's offensive line until you get to Saturday.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I will say, out of everything you said, it was a great show. This is the longest episode we've ever done. It's good to be back with my dude here, Clint Lamb, and appreciate all the time. I will say, I wish you would have told me you were going to say 30-13, because now I feel like an asshole for saying 30-10. So that is that's something that I'm very frustrated with you about. We'll talk about that.
No, that's fine. You can be frustrated with me all you want to. What that told me is that you don't watch my show, because I already said 30-13 on mine.
Clint, I'm very busy and I hate everything. I watch everything you post on social media and I retweet all of it.
Hey, you're covering everybody now.
Dude.
I mean, it's fair. You ain't got time to just listen to Bama content or just South Carolina or just LSU. You are a man that wears many hats, and I will say you wear them extremely well. South Carolina fans, they got a good one on this show. I mean, they're fortunate.
It's been a lot of fun. I will say that, and I should start listening to more of your stuff, because I enjoy your content more than anyone. So, anyway, thank you so much, dude. I appreciate it. I was gonna say, tell people where they can find you. Like tell people where they can find you on social media. I don't know if you're gonna want to consume a lot of the content after this week. No offense, just because it's Bama heavy, but he does a phenomenal job breaking down X and O's, film, all that kind of stuff. It's a great follow on social media. Knows the game better than almost anyone, and looks svelte. You look losing weight, brother. By the way, guess how much weight I've lost?
How much?
I've gained 4 pounds. But listen, what I've been doing is lying to people and be like, dude, I'm down like 14 pounds. They're like, really? I'm like, no.
You're taking
just lie.
You're taking the Nate Bargatze route. You're just, hey, I look really good for a guy that used to weigh 300 pounds.
Yes,
but
I mean,
brother, this isn't lost weight. This is what we call camera angles. And if you just put it on just a slight elevation on top of your screen, then it ends up making you look a lot better. And I worked with the lighting. Luckily, I'm married, and my wife comes home and she knows exactly what I look like. Yeah. But if I was single, I would be catfishing everybody.
Brother, I had to do a thing the other day on like ABC Baton Rouge, whatever it is here, and they had me on TV, and the camera angle was from the side, like down here to the side, and I was like, "Are you out of your effing mind? Like, what?" Anyway, all right, we got to get out of here, brother. I will talk to you soon. I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna hit click here. Stay around for a second. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. We'll have another episode. We'll talk about some of the things that South Carolina will need to do with Mike Bratton to win this game as well.